The MVP award is one of the hardest awards to predict because how wide-ranging the criteria could be. One season, the award goes to the player with the best stats. The other season, it goes to the player that has the most value to this team. Sometimes it goes to the player with the best highlights, but it's almost always important what kind of narrative surrounds that player. All of that makes guessing who's going to win the MVP a complete crapshoot, especially in June. But this week, we're going to take a crack at it as I'm going to predict and go over all of the current MVP candidates and see who is truly going to be the favorite. See, the MVP odds were released earlier this week, and it had me thinking. One, almost all of the top odds go to quarterbacks, so this is pretty much a quarterback award. How likely is it that the favorites actually carry throughout the season? Because I truly believe that this year is the most wide open the MVP has been in years. I mean, look, the current leader and favorite, Patrick Mahomes, might lose his best target for the entire year. Mayfield gained an incredible top target, and he's entering his second year. Brady and Rivers are both aging, and as we know, when it comes to quarterbacks, aging kind of happens fast. Quarterbacks can fall off a cliff like that. And Carson Wentz is coming off of another season-ending injury. With that being said, let's jump to our first candidate, Patrick Mahomes. Now, when you look at the first reason why Patrick Mahomes could win the MVP, it's because he's Patrick Mahomes. He can do things that we have never seen on a football field. He has the most unique skill set. He is the most individually talented quarterback to walk into the league in years. The plays that he's capable of making are these highlight reel no-look passes or these 80-yard bombs he's able to throw. He has literally changed the game of football in just one season. So to think that he couldn't win the MVP would be ridiculous. And that is why he is the favorite to win the MVP. And one of the main things that will keep Patrick Mahomes in the MVP conversation, which is similar to something like the NBA where James Harden is always going to be in the MVP conversation, is because neither of these two players ever are that far away from a highlight reel. And whether we want to admit it or not, the MVP is voted on by humans. Humans are susceptible to bias, and when a player keeps showing up on highlight reels, that inflates how good we think they are. So it makes them more likely to win MVP awards because they're always in our conscious. And the opposite of this will be discussed with another player, which I think a lot of you know, but for now, that's going to be something that's going to keep Patrick Mahomes in the MVP conversation for a long time to come. But with all that being said, this is why I don't believe that Patrick Mahomes is going to win the MVP this year. He does not have or may not have his number one target, which is one thing. But also look at the season that Patrick Mahomes had last year, the incredible numbers, incredible stats, incredible highlights. It is going to be almost impossible to live up to it. I mean, if he does, put him in the Hall of Fame, but it's going to be almost impossible for him to be on that same level that he was last year. So much so that if he puts up what for most quarterbacks would be considered a breakout year, throwing over 4,000 yards, having, 37 plus touchdowns, maybe only like 10 or 12 interceptions, it's going to be looked at as a disappointment and a down year for him because of the incredible heights he reached last year. The bar is just set so incredibly high for Patrick Mahomes that it's almost impossible for him to reach that goal and become a back-to-back MVP, especially if he's not going to have Tyreek Hill, whose future right now is up in the air. The next guy on the MVP candidate list is Carson Wentz. And Carson Wentz is an MVP candidate because he is supremely talented. If Patrick Mahomes is the most individually talented player that we've seen, Carson Wentz was that before Patrick Mahomes entered the league. Carson Wentz is 6'5", 235 pounds, can move around. Sometimes he can remind you of Cam Newton with his physical ability, with his ability to run the ball, and with how strong he is. And then on the other hand, he can remind you of Ben Roethlisberger with how well he can maneuver a pocket, how well he can do pre-snap things, and how well he could throw a ball downfield. The combination of those two things sounds like a guy built to be an MVP candidate, but the story with Carson Wentz has been the story of his life, and he has been consistently injured throughout his NFL run, which has stopped him from being an MVP and which has stopped him from reaching his peaks as a player so far. So while I have no problem thinking that Carson Wentz has no doubt the raw talent to be an MVP candidate, the injuries are a factor, because while he should, in a perfect world, be a MVP candidate and an MVP favorite, he has had season-ending injuries the last 2 years. And that's important. To be able to expect a guy to play at an elite level after coming off his second injury, which, by the way, after he came off the first injury, he was not looking like the elite quarterback that he was before it, is a little bit ridiculous. I don't know if that expectation is fair for Carson Wentz. I don't know if that expectation is even healthy for Carson Wentz to have for himself, but I can't sit here and give Carson Wentz the expectation of competing for an MVP after having 2 season-ending injuries. I don't think it's a realistic ask for Carson Wentz, and while I think a year or 2 down the road it will, this season I think that's going to be a bit much. The next guy is Andrew Luck. And Andrew Luck is a player that I have a lot of love for and a lot of respect for. I think he has been the single most valuable player to any NFL franchise in the last decade. I don't think we've seen a guy more valuable to his team than, ironically, the guy he succeeded in, Peyton Manning. If you just look at the win percentage of the Colts with Andrew Luck on the field and without him, it tells a serious story about how important this guy is to what the Colts are doing. The fact that when he's not on the team, this is a borderline bottom 5 franchise, but when he is on the team, this is a team that can compete for AFC Championship and make a Super Bowl on any given Sunday. Shows you the tremendous value that Andrew Luck has to the team. But see, when it comes to Andrew Luck, the thing with Andrew Luck is that you always have to make an argument for Andrew Luck, because Andrew Luck is just very, I don't want to say underrated, but I think he is underappreciated. I don't think people understand the full value of Andrew Luck. And I think there's a multitude of factors, but I think the main factor is that Andrew Luck is kind of like the NFL version of Kawhi Leonard. See, both guys don't really yearn for the spotlight. Both are extremely awkward in interviews. Both are lacking that, it factor when it comes to being the obvious MVP candidate that they are. I mean, if you look at what Kawhi Leonard did in the finals, the fact that he's never really been considered for an MVP award in his career is ridiculous. The same way that you could look at Andrew Luck uplifting a terrible Colts team and making them one of the best teams in the NFL just a year after they were one of the worst. Multiple times he's done this. It's ridiculous he's never been considered for an MVP. But here we are today, and I think Andrew Luck is probably the most deserving guy of an MVP that will never get an MVP in his career. Sure, that's not a valid reason for not winning the MVP. The MVP is an award that should be won on the field, technically, but we all know when it comes to a human vote, what's on the field is only part of the pie. There is so much more that goes into it. And that is why I don't think Andrew Luck is going to win MVP this year. And unfortunately, he might never win one in his career unless he just goes 16-0 and it's undeniable that he's the MVP. But as long as there's a reason not to give Andrew Luck the MVP, there probably will be a reason why Andrew Luck did not get the MVP. The next guy is Aaron Rodgers. And I think Aaron Rodgers could easily win the MVP for a multitude of reasons this year. Due to the drama he had last year, I think a lot of people forgot how good Aaron Rodgers could be, how talented Aaron Rodgers could be. This is a guy at one point in his career was being called the Michael Jordan of football, while Tom Brady was still in the league. Like, people really thought that that's how good Aaron Rodgers could be and was. But he kind of fell off a cliff last year because of injuries, because of disputes with the coaches. He just wasn't the same old A-Rod, and it has people wondering if he can be the same guy. He's a mobile quarterback who is aging, and those types of quarterbacks just don't age as gracefully as guys like Peyton Manning or guys like Tom Brady, who are more pocket guys. But I think that Aaron Rodgers definitely has one more elite year left in his legs. He has one more elite year he can squeeze out of himself. And if he can do that for an entire year, there will be a tremendous narrative around Aaron Rodgers that will help propel him into the MVP conversation. And the fact that most people would understand that that would be the last time that Aaron Rodgers would be in the MVP conversation would also ratchet up the intensity and the urgency for people to kind of crown him as the MVP. So I think Aaron Rodgers has a great chance of being MVP. I don't see a lot going against him. Maybe the Matt LaFleur system doesn't work, but I don't see Matt LaFleur as somebody who's going to get in the way of a talent like Aaron Rodgers. So I think it's very likely that Aaron Rodgers is definitely going to be in the MVP conversation this year. Whether he wins it, it depends on who he's going against and what kind of things surround those players. But I think Aaron Rodgers has a tremendous chance to be an MVP this year. And if you're a Packers fan, be excited. I think you're really going to contend this season. The next guy is the last of the older guys, and it's Drew Brees. Now, Drew Brees has a good amount of reasons why he still can. I mean, I think Drew Brees still has a tremendous amount in the tank. I think he showed that last year. I think he is somebody who has a good enough supporting cast to be able to support him as he gets older. And he still has Sean Payton, who has revived and elevated his career a considerable amount. So it's not out the realm of possibility to believe that he can continue to do that even in Drew Brees' old age. And also, I think one of the things that will help him is that if he does have a Drew Brees, a prime Drew Brees-like season this year, it's pretty understood that this is probably the last season or two of Drew Brees' career, and it will definitely be the last season or two that Drew Brees has gas left in the tank. I think what he has left is going to run out probably by the end of this or next season. So if he's able to produce at that level, and really ignite the nostalgia on how good Drew Brees is. I think he's a guy who's been underappreciated enough throughout his career. I mean, I said this in the tier list video. You know, I think Drew Brees is also a guy who's been underappreciated enough to where if he has a great season this year, he will get an MVP as kind of a apology for how underappreciated his career has been. Because if you look at the numbers that Drew Brees has done, in any other era of football, he would be considered one of the greatest of all time. But since he played in an era where his prime was overshadowed by guys like Tom Brady, by guys like Peyton Manning, it left him in this place where he's probably appreciated like he should be in New Orleans, but other places he's not. And I think if he has a great season, the media will see it as a reason to give him an MVP because they have underappreciated him. I think that would be a heavy narrative throughout the season if Drew Brees can make that happen. Now, one of the reasons why he won't is because, hey, Drew Brees is at the age where he can fall off a cliff at any time. And also, they have a lot of other weapons on offense. They have Alvin Kamara. And I think if you're Sean Payton, you're going to rely more on Alvin Kamara to get things done than you are on your aging quarterback. So that's just going to lead to a situation where Drew Brees isn't going to be able to put up the same stats that he used to in the Sean Payton system because the focus isn't really going to be on him. It's going to be on Alvin Kamara. So while it would be a great story, while I'd be excited for that because I would love for Drew Brees to get his recognition finally, but I just don't see it as something that's going to happen. The next guy I think could easily win MVP this year is, surprise, surprise, Baker Mayfield. Now, why he can? Because of his supporting cast. He has Odell, he He has Nick Chubb. He has Kareem Hunt after week 8 if he is who he could be. He has Jarvis Landry. If that line holds up, he could put up impossible numbers. He could put up great stats. Now he's in his second year, so it's a question on how good he's going to be. But if he can live up to expectations with that roster and the offensive line holds up, he's going to put up MVP-like numbers at the very least. Also, another reason, the narrative thing is a very important element because this vote is a human vote. And I think the story of Baker Mayfield could be something that could propel him in MVP conversations. The fact that he was a walk-on, he won the Heisman Trophy, he was a first overall draft pick, but since he went to Cleveland, people thought that wasn't going to work out, and then he ended up overcoming things like having Hugh Jackson as a head coach in order to make Cleveland a contender again. And then that's going to be another story, is that Cleveland, if he puts up MVP-like numbers, is going to be a serious contender in the NFL. And since the Browns recently went 0-16, to have that team be a serious contender is going to be a serious thing that is going to push the narrative and push people to vote for Baker Mayfield for MVP. But I have to throw some water on the flames, and I'm sorry to my fellow Browns fans, but this is why I don't think Baker Mayfield is going to win a lot of MVPs in his career, even if he puts up MVP numbers for multiple seasons in his career. The one reason for this year is that there's going to be an argument that he had too much support. When you have Odell Beckham and you have Jarvis Landry, it's going to make people minimize the value that Baker Mayfield has to the team, because those are two guys who are the best receivers on their own team, and now they're sharing a field together. People are going to argue he has too much surrounding him, that a lot of guys could put up the numbers that Baker Mayfield could, whether it's true or not, with that supporting cast. That is going to be the argument used against him by a lot of the people who don't like Baker Mayfield. And that is the second reason, and why the reason I think is going to hold Baker Mayfield back from winning individual awards throughout his career, is because if Andrew Luck is too quiet to win MVP, Baker Mayfield is easily on the other side of the spectrum. He is a guy who is gonna split people. He's gonna make people think one way or another. And while it's gonna always keep him in the conversation, while it's gonna keep him relevant, and while it's gonna make him one of the most discussed and probably most profitable NFL players off the field, it's going to be something that's going to come against him when it comes to voting, because he's brash, because he's cocky, because he'll go on radio and say what he wants and say how he feels, especially at the age that he is at now. It's going to make people not want to vote for him for MVP. It's going to make people not want to appreciate him. It's going to enable people in the media who hate on him to hold him back and to not give him what he deserves because of who he is, because of how he rolls, because of how he carries himself. People will be hesitant to ever give him the individual recognition that he deserves. He is not somebody who's going to be easy to anoint. He's not going to be somebody who's going to be easy to crown, and he's going to be somebody who's always going to be easy to criticize. So while somebody could put up the same numbers and have the same criticism against them, if it's Baker Mayfield, they're going to dive into that, and they're going to split hairs, and they're going to slight him for things that they wouldn't slight other players for. And that's what comes with the personality of Baker Mayfield. That's all par for the course. That's what you get with the package. And at the end of the day, if he's putting up MVP numbers, then that's all that's important. That brings us to the big question of this video. Who is going to win the 2019 MVP in this guy's mind? Is it going to be Baker Mayfield? Is it going to be the great story that Drew Brees could be if he could squeeze out one more Drew Brees elite year? Is it going to be Aaron Rodgers? Is it going to be Patrick Mahomes? Is he going to be able to reach the same bar that he put impossibly high last year? Is he going to be able to do that? My final answer to this, and what I think is going to happen, is I think Aaron Rodgers is going to be the MVP this season. I think he's going to come back. He's going to have a great season, and everybody's going to run back all them old Aaron Rodgers highlights and realize, this dude was great. This dude is one of the greatest of all time. That conversation is going to pick up, and we're going to really start to appreciate what Aaron Rodgers brings to the table, because I really think he's going to have, not a breakout because he's Aaron Rodgers, but he's going to have one of those big time reminder seasons that makes everybody go, oh yeah. And he's going to get the MVP for it. So that's what I think is going to happen in 2019. I think Aaron Rodgers, this is my official prediction, I think Aaron Rodgers is going to win the MVP this season. Please don't get injured. Please don't let me look like an idiot. So yeah, put $20 down on Aaron Rodgers to win MVP. And hey, if you win a buck or two, because Aaron Rodgers won the MVP just like I told you in June, then hey, you might have a buck or two to spare to become a Patreon supporter and have your name on the bottom of this ticker bar. So hey, put $20 down, become a Patreon supporter. It's all love. It's going to be great. But again, guys, thank you for watching. Don't forget to hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, and ding the notification bell so you could be notified when I upload, and I upload a good amount. I upload 3 times a week, so you're going to want to know when these videos drop. So please ding the notification bell. And let me know in the comment section down below who your dark horse is for MVP. Do you have a candidate? Do you think I am completely off base with Aaron Rodgers winning the MVP? Do you think Baker Mayfield's going to win the MVP? Let me know in the comment section down below who you think is going to win the MVP this season. But again, guys, thank you for watching, and have a good day and have a great night.